My name is JIM ABBISS and I'm a music producer. In my career, I started out in a studio making the tea and plugging leads in for people. And after a few years of building trust with people I work with, I started to become an engineer. So I was allowed to work the mixing console and record things myself. But I had in my own mind that I always wanted to be a producer. And I sort of started off as an engineer and really enjoyed it. But inevitably, sometimes I would work with a producer as an engineer, and some other times I would work with an artist or a band on my own. And even though I wouldn't be called the producer, I would start to help make decisions about arrangement and direction of the track and whatever. So you start to get experience and gain some confidence in your decisions about how you influence the music being made. And I think you can naturally evolve into being a producer, which is what I've done for the last 20-something years. When I was a teenager and I was getting into listening to music, in the days of vinyl records, I used to read the credits and had these names of people that were called producer and engineer or mixer. And I loved music and I played music, and I was fascinated by how you recorded it and what these people did. And I had this romantic notion at the age of 13, 14 that I wanted to be one of those people. And the idea of being a producer was particularly appealing to me. So I tried to find a way of getting into working in recording studios, the music industry, and becoming a music producer. One of my favourite sessions was with a band called Ladytron, who were an electronic synth band, very 80s influenced in their sound, and they were based in Liverpool. And it was an album where I started off and I wasn't sure exactly what my role was, even though I was given the role of producer. I didn't know how much I would be doing on the engineering side, playing, whatever, producing, whatever that means. And we started this record and everyone got involved, and it was a lot of fun. And one minute I'd be at the desk, another time I'd be getting synth sounds or plugging guitar pedals in, or would be working out a new musical section. So it felt like I really was getting my hands dirty, doing so many different things. I felt really like an extra person in the band. And that was kind of harking back to before I ever got involved in recording studios. That's kind of what I imagined it would be like. And so often it isn't. You have a very defined role. But this was a completely free role, and I think part of it was we had a connection musically, but we also got on very well as people, and we made it a very sociable session, and it was a month of really good fun, and I really loved what we did. And I think if anything, I helped push them into some different sort of sound and sonic areas and using different equipment than they would normally, which I think they got a lot out of and took that on themselves. So it was very rewarding on many levels. So that stands out as like a really fun time. Adele is actually quite a unique case because when I met Adele, it was an era where lots of artists were starting to record at home and getting their own laptop production setups. And so a lot of young artists I worked with had spent months perfecting each of their demos, and they were very sort of technical minded, and they wanted to use real versions of what they had on their laptops, and that had some benefits, but it could also get in the way of what you were trying to do at times. Adele was very, very different. Although she cared passionately about wanting the record to sound good, she wasn't interested in the technical side of it. And she just trusted me and the guys who were working in the studio with her to make sure all that was taken care of. She wanted to sing and perform her songs to the best of her ability. And she had an incredible talent for doing that. But it felt a little bit like what I imagine working, say, in the 60s on a, Frank Sinatra and an orchestra, where you've only got 3 hours, you've got to capture this performance, everything's got to work, and they're not there coming in the control room asking how you're setting your compressor. They just want to perform, set an atmosphere, and go. And so it was a very, very different sort of workflow. It was a lot of preparation, so that when she came in, often the songs we did on that first album were very pared back. They were a couple of musicians and her singing, and we did them live, and it was just preparing that with a spare set of everything, and a spare set of leads, and a spare mics, and spare everything, so that if anything went down, which it does from time to time in studios, and stops working, you could instantly get it working again and carry on. And then once she'd done a few takes, there would be a standout take, and then there might be some editing. But as long as she heard back in the room what she was feeling, that was kind of it. And she would hang around for some overdubs and then go. And it was very, very different to a lot of sessions, which are, 12 hours or more, everybody involved in everything, looking over your shoulder, and can I do this bit? And I've just heard something here. That it was just so different to that. So that was unique. Workflow on normal sessions, depending on who they are, if it's, again, based around a live setup, it's getting everybody going, recording takes, editing the best out of them, deciding what you're going to keep from that. Say it's a backing track with a band playing, for argument's sake, and then deciding what you're going to redo, if you're going to change setups to do the next stage of the recording. So you tend to get into a pattern of working. Maybe if, let's say, you're working on a song, or a couple of songs, you might do the backing tracks one after the other, then come back and do the overdubs, or you can just work on a song to its completion. But you tend to get into a pattern that kind of takes you all through the day. My preference is to work with a desk, but it's really to do with they are all tools to do your job, and whatever you're doing, it's whatever you're comfortable with and what you get the best workflow, I think, is what you should use, and also what you're quickest at, because in the studio there is a lot of time pressure, and if you can do things quickly so that you can keep people engaged, and therefore they're excited about stuff and feeling positive about things, and they can do good takes, that makes your job a lot easier. The less time you spend doing technical stuff, certainly in front of an artist, it's better for everybody, because they don't get bored. There's things that technically don't work or whatever. So it's about having a really quick workflow that you enjoy, I think. And I was brought up on mixing consoles, and in the last few years I've worked, especially with engineers I work with who are much younger than me, that have grown up in the box. It's a case of finding what's the best of each world. I still, when I walk into a recording studio, I kind of feel secure when there's a desk, and because I like the idea that you've got something central in the room, a focal point. I like the sound of desks because it's a coherent sound. Everything that's going through it is mixed together. It's conceptually has a unity to it, and I like the instantaneous thing of, if I want to turn the main guitar up, I lean over and I do it. I can do that while somebody's still working on the computer. You can have 2 or 3 people doing things on it at the same time, as opposed to everything having to go through the conduit of one person and a mouse. And I find that limiting and frustrating. So we generally would work on the desk, especially if we're recording a lot of people. It ends up in Pro Tools, and as we carry on and the session builds and it becomes more complex, it sort of moves over to being more in the box by the end of the session. But I've done numerous sessions where I've tried to do everything in the box, and I get frustrated regularly by having to explain something, because somebody's probably an operator is quicker at doing the thing than I am, but having to explain it gets frustrating. I couldn't imagine it without a console for, as I say, the focal point and also the sound of it. And it still does, although the plugins have advanced so much in the time that I've used them, but there's still something about, as I say, the sort of unity of everything through that desk, through the mix bus, that I still really, really enjoy. And if you like the sound of your console, I don't see why you wouldn't use it and optimize that. I'm very happy with a console. When I got this building, and I was thinking about how to design the studio, and I worked with a good friend, Barney Barnicott, who builds studios, and he used to work with me a lot in the studio as an engineer and a mixer, and still does actually. We basically based it on my favourite studios, and there were three main rooms that I used extensively. One was in a studio called Mayfair, and there was a room there which had a main room, but then 2 or 3 booths off it, which all had glass fronts, so everyone could see each other, but be separated if they wanted to be. And that, for me, was a really significant thing, because I think, especially if you're working with bands, and I've worked with lots of bands over the years, and I've really enjoyed that process. A band has an internal kind of sound that they've created through rehearsals for many years and playing together and gigs and whatever, and there's a sort of telepathy thing goes on, and they when they're together and they're enjoying their sound, they do something that's unique to them. So I wanted to build somewhere that had a live room that everybody could be in, but we could separate people, their amps, whatever, off separately for the sound if we chose to, and not if we didn't want to. So flexibility of recording areas was hugely important. And because I think recording for me has always been a collaborative and sociable thing, I'm not a kind of fan of remote working or working on my own in a small room. I like everyone to be around. And so it gives you options to do things instantly. If someone has an idea because they're inspired by something, I want to be able to get that idea, I always use the phrase onto tape, but we all know what I mean. I want to get that idea as quickly as possible, because that initial bit of inspiration that someone does it's gold dust. And you rarely better it if you then go and try and repeat it because you spend an hour setting up a better version of the sound. Something is lost in that translation. So if you've got things ready to go all the time, you get lots of inspirational things happening. So I wanted a big control room. So they were my main criteria. Big control room that people can fit in comfortably and be around if they need to be. Somewhere to send them if you don't need them. So we have a little leisure room and stuff. They can do the pub Olympics in there, and then a big recording area with different spaces, different sonic spaces and areas to separate things if you need to. So they were my criteria, and it really does. It's a sort of a homage to that room at Mayfair, which sadly no longer exists. A room at the Chapel, which is a residential studio in the north of England, which I've done lots of stuff like. That was also a similar idea, and and it's kind of a homage to the best of those studios. There are many ways to record, and I used to do a lot of stuff that, especially in the kind of trip-hop era, I used to do a lot of things where you'd be working to stuff that had been programmed, and it was often a case of just recording people separately. And I've done tons of stuff where you're doing one thing at a time. Sometimes you're basing it on a template of a demo, or sometimes you're just starting from scratch, but you're basing it around something that's programmed or looped or whatever, and you are doing stuff separately because you're building it up as you come up with new stuff and new ideas, and that can be amazing. But I still love people playing together in a room, regardless of the genre of music. People do things and play things differently when they're reacting to somebody else, and so I'm probably at my happiest when you've spent time setting up all the individual sounds. You may be playing to something that's programmed, or not. You may just be doing a take, just them on their own. But that thing of people reacting to what each other's doing, if they're confident and they enjoy doing that, which is another big thing, it feels like you're getting a unique, you're recording a moment that's unique. You're getting a take, hopefully, that they won't ever do exactly the same. And so I find that there's a bit of magic, well, there can be a bit of magic just to that, rather than doing something individually a million times and editing it. Getting it in one go can be amazing. Well, music does so many different things it does so many different things to an individual, and there are things that mean things at different times. I mean, you might be going through a really tough time in your life, and you hear something that's, that touches you in some way. That's might often be something that's almost sentimental that can touch you. That's massively important. But then the next day you might want something that's really aggressive and energetic because you're feeling jarred off with somebody. I don't know. Somebody cuts you up in the traffic. I don't know, just some random thing, and you want a different thing, don't you? So I don't think you can say that. I don't think I can say there's one thing, but there's a word that I loathe because of its overuse of late. But I think authenticity is significant. I think that if it sounds like the people doing it are only doing it because, and I'm talking about recorded music now, but they're only doing it because what they're hearing out of their speakers when they're making it or writing it or whatever is genuine, I think that can come across, as opposed to doing stuff because they think it will do well or be popular. So often, if I get sent tracks that people have recorded to maybe work on them, I listen to it and I just think, wow, it just sounds really interesting. They've done something that I would never think of, or it sounds like they've done it because they love it. Then that often gets me excited. And I'd say the same for just hearing a random track played to me or on the radio or whatever, and going, oh, that's interesting, what's that? And I think things that are done, you can almost tell when things have been done for the market. Unfortunately, there's way too much of that crap around, I think. When I was looking for somewhere to building a studio in, you're looking for the best option available to you. And there's lots of factors in that, obviously money, what the property is, what you can change about it. But I was really, really keen to have the option of a double height room, because I've been to so many studios over the years, all around the world. I've been very fortunate, and often studios that were repurposed buildings. They used to be a cinema or a church or a school or whatever, and an older building, say. This isn't an older building at all, but they would have a main room that was big, and there'd be issues with the sonic character, but they didn't knock it down. They liked the basis of what was that room, and they just treated areas over time as they learnt what sounded good, and put, hung curtains in one end or put soundproofing, sound absorption panels, to the point where they got a space that sounded really good, but it had a character. So this is not an old building, but it had the facility to make a double height room. So we put a sloping ceiling in it. We didn't initially treat the walls, and then we found where we were getting little flutter echoes, so we found bits where we got a really nice natural bottom ends and corners or whatever, and we adapted that room to accentuate those things or make the best of things or cover over things that were annoying about it. So I've ended up with a big space that's tall, so it's really good for ambient sounds, because I've also been in rooms that are big floor area but just low ceilings, and I've not been in one that sounds great. So it has the space to get diffuse echoes. So it has I suppose most people who go in there and clap their hands or hear drums think it alludes to that kind of Bonham-esque size. So I love that, because if you've got that as a starting point, you can always dampen things down, you can always screen it off, you can always put things in a corner and do whatever you need to do to lessen that. But you have the option of a characterful room, and that's become really more and more important to me, because I think a lot of music and sound recording I think it's probably getting better again now, but for a period of time it went very homogenized, and everything was very controlled. And I think that the more recording spaces that have a character that is unique to them, the better. Because I grew up on music that was made in studios, say, across the north of England, and a studio 20 miles away from this place was in a completely different building that sounded completely different, and the record sounded completely different, and no one cared. They embraced that. And so I like the idea of it having a sound. It won't suit everybody, but I don't care. It suits me. Well, I grew up on the first music that really excited me was punk rock, and I was a little young to be actively involved in or anything when it came out, but it had a massive influence on me. I didn't have any older brothers or sisters, so I just sort of got it through friends at school and their older siblings. That's when I first heard it, and it would be on the radio occasionally. And it was really important because for two reasons. One, it was, at the time I was jarred off with school and everything, and it was like a rebellious release, punk rock. It just was like a big FU to everything. It was kind of escapism, really, and it also was like it opened up. I mean, I didn't know this at the time because I was just a kid, but it sort of opened up the music industry. It sort of took it away from the sort of, say, the prog rock era, which there's some great music within that, which I've later discovered. But it seemed very almost elitist. You had to have a lot of money to make the records. With punk rock, you could just go into a little studio and set up, and if you had a good idea and you believed in it, you could get a little record out, and then people would hear about it and then go and see your gigs, and a lot of things started spreading that were word of mouth and kind of really very small, and then they grew because people got excited by it. And so to be sort of learning about that and experiencing that as in my very early teens was just really exciting. And at that time, there's so many genres seemed to come out. Every year there was a new genre that people got into, so it was a very inspiring time. From punk, post-punk and two-tone and new romanticism, and then the whole sort of synth explosion. Then music came from America that was like the sort of electro and the early versions of hip-hop. It just, over a sort of 6, 7, 8 year period, so many different sort of forms of music came out. So it was very exciting because it felt like it was endless supply of creativity you could sort of tap into. I think there are certain things that I still find myself doing. Like I love, as I say, I love people who can play in a room together. That's a fundamental. And so I've grown to really, really appreciate, extremely talented musicians. So people that can interpret ideas, instantly come up with something that's interesting, perform it really well. That's inspiring to me a lot more these days, and also it saves you all time in the studio rather than agonising over to a bar at a time with someone who can't play. So that I find that inspiring. But if it becomes about doing something complicated for the sake of it or showing off, I'm just so not interested. So I love it when people who have the ability to do complex things do simple but effective things incredibly well. That gets me excited to this day. There's still a little bit of that punk ethic in me, which will never go away, of just keep it simple. But I love it when it's played by somebody who, if you need it, can just do something that's way beyond that. When you're in the recording studio and you want what you're recording and mixing and ultimately releasing to the public, you have to have a standard that you want your recordings to have, that you want to know that if they're played on a very detailed system, they will stand up, they will sound good. But you also have to bear in mind that a lot of people, most people, will listen on very basic systems, from something, you know, shoved in the corner of the kitchen, some version of a radio player thing, a ghetto blaster, I used to call them, right through, you know, to terrible earbuds. I mean, the whole range of things that people will listen to music on, or a little powered speaker full of sand. So you have to kind of be aware of all those things, but I still think you have to aim for it to, when it leaves you, your studio and it goes to the mastering process, what's being done is a lot of care is taken over it. It's the best that you can do, technically, sonically, the best that you can do. So you have to have, you know, I think a listening environment where you can hear the detail, which allows you to, you know, get the best that you can out of your facility, whether that's speakers or headphones. When, you know, for the vast majority of the time in the control room of the studio, we're using monitors. So because everybody's hearing it, so you might have, you know, I might be there, or I will be there, an engineer, the assistant most probably, and the artist. That can be, you know, one or a number of people, and the music's being played, and you're working on something, whatever you're doing, an overdub, or you're editing something, or who knows. So everybody's hearing the speakers. But there are lots of times when headphones become important. There are times when you want to do something privately, where you're editing something, you don't want everybody here listening to it. There are times when you are trying to work a musical idea out, and again, you don't want to let people to hear that idea until you've worked that idea out. You could be writing something, so you're looping a 4-bar section because you're coming up with something new. You could be having a break from the speakers when you're mixing, and you just want to hear something different, and you want to check, you know, the stereo field on an amazing set of headphones. So there's lots of times where headphones become very, very important. You might want to inspire a singer who your normal headphones, just, you know, average studio headphones, they're just not excited about hearing their voice in them. So you want something that's more detailed and enveloping for them to lose themselves in, so they can perform better. So having a good pair of headphones has many different roles in a recording environment. Obviously the listening environment at home, if you just want to be, you know, lights down and just zone out on something, I don't think there's anything better than a good pair of headphones for that. So I think they both have their place at different times in the work and home environment. I'd split it into probably 3 areas. The most important thing is the sound, because that's what they're there for, and they are very open sounding. They have real lows, like down to your ankles lows, and really pristine highs, but nothing feels overly accentuated. So you don't get, I've listened to tons of pairs of headphones, and sometimes you get overly bright things that are meant to sound impressive, but they just get tiring. Or they have, again, overextended bottom end that it's like, I don't want my head to be like shaken. I just want I want to know that it's going to go down to the frequencies that are available in the sounds we're putting together. And they have a really great sort of frequency range that sounds very natural, but also they're very detailed. So they're great for setting your stereo field. If you pan something at 1:45, you can almost visualize it. If it's, you know, it's somebody shaking a shaker, you visualize it being there. It just sits there, and that's really good for for the sort of latter stages of what you're doing, and you're just, say, checking some mixes that are getting towards the end point of just really making sure you're happy with, if somebody is like listening, somebody, you know, who hears this for the first time and they've got their eyes closed on headphones, they can almost see where the things are panned, and they're really detailed and good for that. And then the next thing I think is the sort of comfort of wearing them. They sit on your head really comfortably. They're not too heavy. They're not sort of claustrophobic. They just, you listen to them for 10 minutes and you forgot you've got them on, which I think is also really important, because you can be, let's say you are programming something or editing something, you could be looping around a few bars for hours, and they're very comfortable to sit there and do that. They're not fatiguing physically or fatiguing sonically, so you can wear them for a long time, and that's often very useful. And last but not least, they're a good design. They're interesting looking and robust, and seem like they're going to last. So yeah, I think those are the criteria I think are pretty good. Well, very good.